Hello, I'm Emma O'Brien, transformational life and business coach, and in today's video I'm going to share with you some ways that you can start to reframe failure. Now, unless you don't get out much, failure is an inevitable part of being human. It's an inevitable part of existing on this planet. Unfortunately, whenever you try something new, you run the risk of failing. And one of the things I have learned over the years of a failed marriage, another failed relationship, of business stuff that hasn't always gone according to plan, of life stuff that hasn't always gone according to plan, it's one of those things. And the better you can become equipped to pick yourself up and carry on, and it's not, that is part of it, but it's also the better you can learn to cope with it and process it, the quicker you will move past it and move on and move forwards. So one of the things that happens when stuff goes wrong is that we generally feel revolting, and we tend to try and fight those feelings that come up. This is the prime time for negative self-talk to arrive. This is prime time for people, actually for us to start lashing out at other people, until one becomes a little bit more enlightened. Finding someone to blame can often be the go-to when something goes wrong. And the only thing you can do in life is change yourself. We don't have control over anybody else, obviously. So it's about some inner work to be able to process through when things go wrong. So when something goes awry, whatever that is, whether it's a relationship that's failed, whether you didn't get a job, I'm going to share a little bit more about my own experience with that and how I dealt with it. Whether it's you've been rejected in some shape or form, whether it's something you thought would work really well that didn't go according to plan. The first step to being able to reframe that and move past it is to just acknowledge that it happened. Because if we stay stuck in denial, that's where you'll stay stuck. It's not fair, that should have worked, I don't know what went wrong, blah, 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 blah. And we'll keep telling ourselves those stories and we stay stuck there. And that's when you end up stuck in victim mode. And that's where you'll start to reach for, who do I blame and punish for this? And actually, that's not very helpful, because what we want to do is move past it. So the first one, acknowledge it. If you have to say it out loud, I am really angry I didn't get hired for that job. The minute you acknowledge it, it starts to take away its charge, because it's not rattling around in here with like, God, I can't say it out loud. Acknowledge it is the first thing to do when something's gone wrong. Acknowledge that it's happened. Acknowledge that it's happened. When something goes wrong, you will be flooded, most likely, with a bunch of negative feelings. So whether that's anger, whether that's rage, whether that's jealousy, whether that's despair, whatever it is, feel it. I believe it is Jill something Bolte, the lady with the brain and the TEDx talk, who talked about if you sit with a feeling, it takes 90 seconds for that feeling, emotion to pass. But often we don't sit with them. We sit and we go, I see you there, but I'm just going to keep you over there because I don't want to deal with you. And if you can feel through the feelings, they will pass far quicker. And feeling feelings might involve going to talk it through with a therapist. It might involve journaling it all out. It might involve phoning a friend and saying, I need to have a rant, give me 10 minutes. It might involve, going for a very fast run. It might involve screaming into a pillow, going in the garden and screaming, whatever. Whatever it takes, as long as you're not doing something that harms somebody else, feel the feelings. Allow them to come up and allow them to come out. Because as soon as we feel, what's that wonderful cliche? You got to feel it to heal it. But it's true. Once you've acknowledged it and you've kind of felt through and you've processed through the immediate triggering stuff, this is a great opportunity to start to put this reframing and learning from failure piece, which is something I coach around, into play. Ask for feedback wherever possible. So I know this isn't always possible. So let's take the example of you've been dating someone for 2 months, it was going really well, and all of a sudden they ghost you. You're probably not going to ever find out why that is, and that is a very hard thing to sit with. But the fact that somebody has just shut you off immediately is probably got a lot more to do with what's going on with them than it has with you, unless you've done something really weird that you know about, and you can go, won't do that weird thing again. On the job front, if you have been applied for a job and you haven't got it, wherever possible, ask for feedback, because you can, when we have information, we can do something differently. So I'll give you a great example. Recently, I was asked to quote on a very, very large commercial photography job. So alongside the coaching, I'm a photographer as well. And I got down to, it was a specialist, I'm an animal photographer, so it was a very specialist job. And I got down to the last 2 people, but I didn't get the job. And I was disappointed, but I looked at it and I went, right, I'm going to find out why. So I sent an email through and I said, could you please give me a bit of information as to why I wasn't hired for this job? And I got the feedback that it went to another photographer who has been around a bit more. It's an advertising job, you know. She got the job on merit, and that's fine. They chose her over me. And that is entirely fine. I have to sit with that, and that's fine. But a few things happened leading up to that didn't really play in my favor, that I won't allow to happen again. So this was a job that came through. I had a phone call from a photography agent who I've never met or spoken to before, who had been referred to me by another photographer that's an acquaintance that I know. It was like a lastminute.com. I quoted over the phone for it, so I had a very vague idea of what the brief was. I was never given a brief. There was some dates, they were vague. It was what they needed was vague. I sent a portfolio through, but had not had the brief, I didn't necessarily send the portfolio of images they needed to see through. It was all up in the air. It was like Chinese whispers, and then the agent was going through a production house who was going through to the client, and it was really haphazard. And the feedback was great. So, you know, and it's never personal. It wasn't anything personal. But I know the next time something like that comes up, I have a whole host of other questions I need to be asking. I need to see a brief for a start. And then I can prep, and I need to know what the deadlines are and exactly what's needed from me. I will do much better next time because I've learned from that. And that is where getting feedback is so very, very valuable. And it might be if you've gone for a job and you haven't got it, they might say, well, somebody was equally as good as you, but they had one more qualification. Great. You know, if you want to go for a job like that again, you need to go to night school for a little while. You need to learn something else. Once we have information, the unknown ceases to be so such a factor that affects things for us. I've kind of talked about point number 4 and point number 3 of reflect on what you'll do differently next time. So armed with information from having feedback, you can make different decisions. So like I said, I will ask better questions the next time I have somebody phone me about a random job and I've not been involved in the meeting or the planning process. It's very difficult with something like that, and it was a really big job as well. There's lots of things I'll do differently. And again, you can start to apply this with jobs, with dating, with blah, 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 blah. If you can get feedback, you can know what you need to change the next time. And that's really, really valuable information. That is where we learn from when things go wrong. And the last thing is to let it go and move on. And don't punish yourself with it. That's very hard, because if you are somebody who is quite driven and you have big goals and you've got big things that you want to be doing, it is very hard not to beat yourself up about it. But there comes a point where you have to go, all right, it didn't go my way this time. I'm going to let that go. I've learned from it. I've worked out roughly what went wrong, and I'm going to do it differently next time. And therein, ladies and gentlemen, finishes the lesson about reframing failure. I hope that was helpful for you. As I've said, I am a life and business coach, and helping people traverse the change journey is something that I help people with, whether they're starting businesses, scaling businesses, making life changes. So this is all stuff I can help you with. So if you've listened to this and you're curious and you'd like to know more about how coaching might help you, please pop me a message and we can hop on an exploratory call and see how I could help you. And in the meantime, I invite you to have a think about something that's bugging you that didn't go right, and see how you can start to work through the 5 steps I've shared, reframe it, and then let it go. I'll see you again soon.